Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is officially a commoner after being formally stripped of his last remaining honours by the King.
The royal palace was just rocked by a massive bombshell that caught everyone off guard. Word is that Meghan is completely devastated after Andrew dropped a late-night revelation that was truly disturbing to hear in the dead of night. What did Andrew actually confess to leave Meghan so completely shaken? And how did this trigger a brand new crisis for the royal household? Let us break down this web of family feuds, backstage drama and high-stakes power plays sparked by the one book that changed everything. For many years, Virginia Giuffre repeatedly tried to share her painful story about Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the elite men she accused of abusing her. But it was only when her memoir Nobody's Girl was posthumously released in October 2025 that her heavy accusations truly rocked the British royal establishment to its core. Tragically, Giuffre took her own life in April 2025, leaving behind a raw written record exposing years of terrible abuse and naming Prince Andrew as a central figure in her ordeal. The book immediately became a massive bestseller, climbing to #1 on Amazon ahead of its official launch date. Readers all over the globe were left completely stunned by Giuffre's highly detailed accounts of being forced into intimate encounters with Andrew on 3 separate occasions when she was only 17 years of age. She wrote about meeting the prince at Ghislaine Maxwell's London townhouse, where Maxwell had once casually promised her that, just like Cinderella, she was going to meet a real prince that night. According to Giuffre's book, the daughters were barely any younger, a chilling detail that made the unfolding drama feel so much more disturbing. What made this celebrity memoir what really hurt was the raw emotional authenticity plus the specific details Giuffre shared about Andrew's behaviour. She wrote that the prince genuinely seemed to believe that having intimate relations with her was his royal birthright, a deeply entitled attitude she had replayed in her mind many times in the long years since. The explosive book also detailed claims that Andrew's team tried hiring online trolls to viciously harass her during their bitter legal battle, and that he actually tried to dig up dirt on her using his private security team. Even worse, Giuffre explained how Andrew made it incredibly hard for her own lawyers to serve him legal papers by running off to Queen Elizabeth's Balmoral Castle in Scotland and hiding behind its heavily guarded gates. The disastrous timing of this scandalous memoir hitting the shelves could not have been worse for the royal family. King Charles was already battling his own serious health challenges after a cancer diagnosis, and the royal palace was working overtime to secure public support during this fragile transition period. The explicit nature of Giuffre's allegations, combined with the immense sympathy sparked by her tragic and sudden death, whipped up a perfect storm of public outrage that would force the king to act in ways nobody had anticipated just weeks earlier. Andrew made desperate attempts to cling to power. Even as intense pressure grew after the release of Giuffre's book, the prince initially refused to accept the grim reality of his downfall. Just 4 days before the memoir hit the shelves, he announced that he would willingly give up his Duke of York title, hoping that this strategic preemptive move would satisfy his harshest critics and allow him to protect some small shred of his former royal status. In his statement, Andrew claimed he was putting his duty to family and country first, while still aggressively denying every single allegation made against him. But that desperate gesture was simply too little too late. Behind closed doors, Andrew was fighting tooth and nail to keep his highly privileged lifestyle at Royal Lodge, the 30-room mansion on the historic Windsor estate that he had called home for decades. He had signed a 75-year lease on the property back in 2003, paying just $1 million up front with the agreement that he would handle all maintenance and renovation costs. Now, with King Charles absolutely determined to evict him, Prince Andrew was searching desperately for any legal loophole or delaying tactic that might allow him to stay. According to reliable sources close to the royal family, Andrew made some truly extraordinary demands in exchange for leaving quietly. He reportedly wanted a massive financial settlement, with some palace insiders claiming he sought as much as $99 million before agreeing to finally vacate the premises. Beyond this fortune, Andrew demanded a full-time staff, including a private cook, gardener, housekeeper and private driver, plus round-the-clock police protection at his brand-new residence. He made it very clear that he expected his future accommodation to maintain the exact same high standard of living he had enjoyed at Royal Lodge, despite the reality that he no longer held any official royal position or earned income beyond his naval pension. The tense standoff between Andrew and the king dragged on for weeks, with the prince using every single delay tactic to slow down the eviction process. He fully knew that the longer he could hold out at Royal Lodge, the more leverage he would have in private negotiations. Reports suggested that he was deeply concerned about exactly what would happen after he left, as the Crown estate had made it quite clear that the property was in such poor condition that he might not receive even a single penny of compensation once the actual cost of repairs was factored in. The dilapidated state of Royal Lodge, with its dampness, peeling paint and serious structural problems, was yet another massive embarrassment for a man who had once enjoyed unlimited access to endless royal resources. The king's difficult decision. For King Charles, the hard choice to strip his younger brother of all official royal titles was easily one of the most painful decisions of his entire reign. Despite Andrew's painful scandals and the massive public outcry surrounding his close association with Jeffrey Epstein, Charles had long hoped that a quiet retirement from public life might be enough to finally contain the damage. The two brothers had shared a childhood and a lifetime of shared experiences within the royal family, and Charles understood all too well how devastating it would be for Andrew to lose absolutely everything that had defined his very identity since birth. By late October 2025, the king understood that small actions simply wouldn't be enough anymore. Virginia Giuffre's book had made people very angry again, and polls showed that most British citizens, royalty experts warned that if Andrew stayed even slightly connected to the family, it could permanently damage the monarchy's reputation for a very long time, especially since younger generations were already rapidly losing support for it. King Charles was under intense pressure from his oldest son, Prince William. William had been pushing for strong action against Andrew for a long time, knowing that one day he would be king, and for the monarchy to survive, they had to stay highly relevant and respected in modern Britain. Prince William believed that keeping Andrew in the royal fold was sending a terrible message about taking responsibility and upholding genuine values. He warned his father they absolutely had to handle the situation with Prince Andrew before it could ruin William's future as king, and that hesitating would only make things worse. On October 30th, 2025, Buckingham Palace issued the historic declaration that officially sealed Andrew's fate. The actual announcement was incredibly brief, but absolutely devastating in its finality. His Majesty had kicked off a formal process to strip away Andrew's official style titles and honours. He was no longer permitted to use Prince Andrew or His Royal Highness. Instead, he would now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, a name that completely stripped away every single marker of royal status he once held. The palace statement also served formal notice that Andrew had to surrender his lease on the Royal Lodge and find private accommodation elsewhere, effectively ending his long stay at one of the most prestigious and historic addresses on the entire Windsor estate. This shocking precedent carries heavy meaning. The move to completely strip Andrew of his prince title stunned countless people far beyond just his immediate family. Legal experts and royal historians pointed out that this was the first time since 1936 that a high-ranking British royal had been so publicly and ruthlessly cast aside by the reigning monarch. By utilising a rare legal instrument known as letters patent, King Charles demonstrated he was ready to exert all his authority to protect the monarchy's reputation, even if it meant making massive and painful personal sacrifices. The ongoing drama quickly grew even more significant, due to the specific language used in the official palace release. The text clearly stated that these harsh actions were necessary despite his continued denial of the serious accusations made against him. This was a critical distinction because it proved the king acted not because Andrew confessed to any wrongdoing, but rather because the toxic allegations and Andrew's deep ties to Jeffrey Epstein had become so damaging that they threatened to sink the entire monarchy. Essentially, the palace statement acknowledged that safeguarding the crown requires making the most brutal decisions, even when targeting close relatives. This devastating fall from grace triggered massive consequences. The Duke would no longer receive the massive annual allowance that funded his lavish lifestyle since Queen Elizabeth passed away. Furthermore, his round-the-clock security, which he formerly received, automatically as a senior working royal, would now have to be financed privately by King Charles if he wanted any protection. But, most critically of all, Andrew would be forced to relocate from Royal Lodge to a far more modest cottage on the Sandringham estate. Insiders reported he was headed to a simple residence that paled in comparison to the grand 30-room mansion he was leaving behind. Royal observers quickly pointed out that Andrew's daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, would completely retain their royal titles despite their father's immense public disgrace. This deliberate choice proved that the king wished to penalise Andrew without directly harming his innocent daughters. Even so, royal sources claim Andrew lobbied intensely behind the scenes to protect his daughter's status, negotiating a quiet agreement with King Charles to ensure that Beatrice and Eugenie remained entirely untouched by their father's toxic scandal. The mere fact that such high-stakes negotiations were required showed how devastatingly Andrew's standing inside the monarchy had crumbled. Meanwhile, a fresh panic was rising in Montecito, California. Inside their sprawling mansion, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle closely monitored every detail of Prince Andrew's swift downfall. Their reaction was a mix of intense curiosity and deep anxiety. Reports suggested they were stunned by how ruthlessly King Charles moved against his own blood. If the monarch could completely strip Andrew of everything, including the very prince title he was born with, what did that mean for Harry and Meghan's own royal titles? This sudden fall from grace was deeply unsettling for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex because it occurred at a moment when their fraught relationship with the rest of the royal family remained deeply broken. Harry and Meghan had famously stepped back from active duties in 2020 and moved to sunny California, where they launched successful new careers in media production and global speaking. They had initially agreed to stop using their His Royal Highness and Her Royal Highness styling in any official capacity, yet they fiercely held on to their Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles, which formed the bedrock of their lucrative global brand and commercial ventures. For Meghan especially, the frightening prospect of losing her Duchess title was reportedly sparking intense anxiety. Reliable sources claimed she was deeply panicked yet fiercely defiant about the threat, telling close friends that no one is taking my Duchess title away. According to these insiders, Meghan fully recognised that the vast majority of their influence in Hollywood big business and charity work stemmed directly from their titles. Without those powerful handles, the entire dynamic of their global presence would shift dramatically, potentially locking them out of the very platforms and elite opportunities that made their massive California venture so incredibly lucrative. Noted royal commentator Rob Shooter reported that a close source revealed Meghan was just as deeply shaken by the Andrew news as Harry recognising instantly that a terrifying precedent had now been set. If the reigning king could strip away both a dukedom and a historic princely title from his very own brother, then Harry's royal status was no longer as secure as they once believed, while the fact that Harry is the king's son rather than just his brother offers a bit of a shield. However, royal observers warn that Prince William will possess absolute authority to strip those titles once he ascends the throne, and William is known to harbour deep resentment over Harry's savage public attacks against the monarchy. This is a massive royal bombshell. Picture this, it is precisely 9:15 on a cold grey London morning. Behind the heavy doors of Clarence House, an urgent emergency meeting has been called in total secrecy. Who is in? The room, the King's top-tier legal team, 2 high-ranking courtiers whose anxious faces are entirely drained of colour, and the monarch's private secretary clutching a thick folder marked with bold red letters, "Confidential Domestic Action." The air is incredibly heavy. You can easily hear a pin drop. And then King Charles III, visibly shaking his voice, breaking under the crushing weight of what he is forced to say, delivers the shocking words that will echo through history. "I intend to separate from Queen Camilla." Can you even fathom that exact moment, the deafening silence that surely followed? Palace insiders report his hands trembled as he spoke. His eyes, bloodshot and exhausted, could barely look directly at his trusted advisers. This was absolutely not a decision made lightly. This was a man on the very brink of complete emotional collapse, forced to choose between his wife and his heavy crown. And here is what makes this even more shocking. Only a tiny select few had been briefed beforehand. Prince William, Princess Anne, and the Lord Chamberlain. That was it. There was no official statement, no media briefing, just completely controlled. A total explosion behind closed palace doors. According to a senior advisor there, King Charles muttered something that will forever haunt everyone in that room. This has become completely untenable. The trust is dead. Now you are probably wondering what on earth could force a reigning king to divorce his queen. We are talking about a man who spent 30 years defending Camilla, face down in public hatred, risking his entire reputation, while slowly and painstakingly, what could possibly shatter that lifelong bond so completely? Well, the answer lies hidden in a secret dossier, a damning and highly classified intelligence report, delivered just 8 days before that fateful meeting exposing direct media manipulation linked to Camilla. It was a dark manipulation carefully cloaked in strategy, and when King Charles read through that report, seeing the absolute proof of what his own wife was pulling behind his back, something deep inside him broke. This marks the first royal divorce of a sitting sovereign in over 400 years. Think about that. Not since the historic reign of Henry VIII has a reigning monarch taken such a step. And we all know how that ended. The royal family has weathered massive storms before. Edward VII's abdication in 1936, Charles and Diana's catastrophic split in 1996. But this is completely different. It comes at a time when the crown is already under intense public scrutiny, when trust in the institution hangs by a thread. For King Charles, this crisis is not just personal, it is historic, it is constitutional, it is existential. But what exactly did Camilla do? What was inside that classified intelligence report that pushed the king past his absolute breaking point? Let's unpack the betrayal that broke the crown. Prince Andrew's former Maid now reveals the dirty truth about him. The downfall of a royal is never quiet, but few have crashed with as much noise and disgrace as Prince Andrew. Hailed as the Queen's favourite son, he now stands as one of the most scandal-plagued figures in the monarchy's history. In 2023, the crown itself cut ties stripping him of all honorary military titles and banning the use of His Royal Highness. For a man raised on pure privilege, it was public humiliation unlike anything the House of Windsor had ever witnessed. But while the entire world focused on lawsuits, headlines, and rumoured connections to Jeffrey Epstein, another dark story was brewing. Not one born inside noisy courtrooms or tabloids, but deep within the palace walls themselves. A story told, not by busy lawyers or journalists, but by someone who lived in the shadows of his daily life, his former maid, Charlotte Briggs. And what she revealed about Prince Andrew is enough to make those scandals attached to his name look totally tame. What did Charlotte Briggs say? Keep watching too. Find out. Charlotte entered Buckingham Palace in 1996, a 21-year-old from Yorkshire who thought she landed a dream role. At first, she was assigned routine duties like cleaning offices, taking out bins, and even sharing small, warm human moments with royals who treated her quite kindly. She remembered Prince Edward holding the door open for her, an unexpected act of pure courtesy. For 6 months, her daily job was simple. Then came the assignment absolutely nobody wanted serving Prince Andrew. What should have been a badge of trust quickly turned into a complete nightmare. At 36 years old, Prince Andrew was freshly divorced from Sarah Ferguson, moving right back into Buckingham Palace on what everyone called the nursery floor. Yet, despite being a full-grown man, a decorated military veteran, and a prince of the royal family, his actual behaviour, as Charlotte recalls, was more like a spoiled brat than a decorated war hero. She vividly remembered her very first taste of his legendary temper, an absolute meltdown over curtains. Andrew sitting right there made her sprint up and down the stairs to adjust those drapes until they were absolutely perfect. But when a tiny crack of light peeked through, his anger boiled over. "Can't you do anything right?" he screamed. Charlotte was left sobbing, completely stunned that such a minor detail could trigger that level of pure rage. This, she later revealed, was not some rare incident. Tantrums were just a daily part of her job. His royal bed had to be made with strict military precision pillows, featuring the embroidered crest positioned perfectly and his pyjamas laid out neatly. Most bizarre of all, however, was how his teddy bears had to be arranged. Miss a single step and Andrew would explode. It wasn't just his petty demands that shook her. It was the sheer hypocrisy. This royal had fought in the Farlands, she kept thinking. Yet he literally couldn't even draw his own bedroom curtains. By comparison, the other royals carried themselves with real dignity. Charles and Edward, she noted, were wonderful. Even Princess Anne kept her distance, but always showed quiet respect. Andrew, however, was the one bad apple who completely ruined what should have been an absolute dream job of a lifetime. Yet she still experienced some incredibly surreal moments. Charlotte was making £600 a month and even found herself standing high on the royal balcony during Trooping the Colour. She was even hugged by Nelson Mandela, a moment she deeply cherished. But behind all that palace grandeur, her daily life was totally overwhelmed by Andrew's childish tantrums. And then there was Sarah Ferguson. Despite their official divorce back in 1992, Charlotte claimed that Andrew kept his ex-wife very close in spirit, if not physically. His wardrobe, she alleged, still held her bridal wedding dress. Her personal makeup was still laid out perfectly on his royal dressing table, as if she were about to walk back in at any single second. For Charlotte, it was deeply unsettling, a sign he simply had not let go, even as the public assumed he had already moved. These stories did not come out right away. They only surfaced years later in 2022, right as Andrew's life totally collapsed under the weight of Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit. Giuffre alleged that she was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and forced to have relations with Andrew as a young teenager. Prince Andrew denied the claims fiercely, but the damage was already done. Against this chaotic backdrop, Charlotte finally spoke out her memories, adding a dark layer to the portrait of a man who demanded absolute loyalty but offered absolutely no humanity in return. And Charlotte was not alone in exposing the bizarre hidden world of the Duke of York, a former palace. Guard named Paul Page backed up her claims in an explosive documentary, Ghislaine, Prince Andrew and the Pedophile. He publicly revealed the plush stuffed animals, insisting his royal bed be piled high with 50 or 60 of them. Palace maids actually had a laminated guide showing where every single toy belonged. If even one teddy was misplaced, Andrew would absolutely lose his mind. Guests noticed too, like author Elizabeth Day during her 2019 Buckingham Palace visit. She waited in a hallway right across from a giant teddy bear propped up on a chair. When she later asked Prince Andrew about the strange toy, he chuckled and said it was a wedding gift. From Sarah Ferguson, what might have seemed like a quirky habit elsewhere felt deeply disturbing when paired with years of damning testimonies about his petty childish demands. Through Charlotte's eyes, the grand illusion of royal dignity totally shattered. Andrew wasn't just a disgraced prince facing major legal battles. He was, in her own words, a bad apple, a royal so blinded by privilege that even the most basic tasks became someone else's burden. Her bold account offered a rare glimpse behind that glittering gilded curtain, and it was far from flattering. For Buckingham Palace, absolute silence was the chosen response. When Markle pressed on Charlotte's claims, not a single comment came. It was the same strategy they used for years. Ignore, outlast, and hope the noise finally fades. But times have. Silence once a royal shield now only amplifies suspicion. What makes Charlotte's confessions so powerful isn't just their content, but their devastating, precise timing. They surfaced at Andrew's absolute lowest point, when public opinion had already turned hostile. Her words heavily reinforced the narrative that the prince who once stood proudly beside his mother on that famous balcony was no victim of circumstance but the architect of his own spectacular downfall. As deeply damning as Charlotte's account wasn't the only blow. During the Duchess of Kent's quiet funeral on September 16, 2025, key senior members of the royal family arrived in sombre black. The Prince of Wales and the Princess Royal were there, both embodying the heavy weight of royal duty during a time of loss. But in the days that followed, it was not the funeral ceremony itself that captured the nation's attention. It was a fleeting 7-second interaction involving Prince Andrew, the disgraced Duke of York, and his outspoken former wife Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. This brief video, captured outside St George's Chapel, showed Andrew speaking to Sarah in what looked like a brief, cheerful exchange. These were harmless gestures on any ordinary day, but devastating in this sombre context. As the rest of the royal family stood in deep mourning, Andrew appeared relaxed, even mildly amused. Within hours, those few seconds ignited a storm. The video began spreading across social platforms almost instantly, and by midnight it had reached over 2 million views. The caption on one highly viral post read simply, "He's laughing at a funeral." Soon major newspapers and broadcasters seized on the story. The Guardian described the moment as a stunning lapse of judgment, while the Telegraph called it a complete optical nightmare for a monarchy already under immense strain. Within 48 hours, an emergency private meeting was called at Clarence House. Present were King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Anne. The agenda was short but explosive. The future of the Yorks and that sprawling 30-room mansion in Windsor, which Prince Andrew has occupied since 2003. Once the highly cherished home of the late Queen Mother, it had come to symbolise unchecked royal privilege and excess. Maintaining this estate costs millions of pounds each year. As one palace insider reportedly told the London Times that funeral was the ultimate tipping point, For months the king carried on with his signature poise and regal composure that had defined his rule for years. He smiled warmly before cameras, shook hands with foreign dignitaries, and performed his royal duties as if everything were perfectly fine. The world saw a highly confident monarch, calm, graceful, and steady, but those who looked a little closer could easily tell that something fundamental had changed. There were signs incredibly small at first. His once brisk walk became notably slower. Behind the king's decision lies a broader plan, a quiet but highly determined effort to reshape the monarchy for a new era. King Charles has often been described as favouring a slimmed-down royal family, one focused on duty, not drama service, not scandal. She found herself thrust once again into the global headlines as old emails resurfaced, linking her directly to the late financier, Jeffrey Epstein. In the immediate wake of this renewed media attention, several charities associated with her quietly paused their active collaborations. Financially and reputationally, the Yorks are widely seen as a major liability, and now, according to key sources close to the Crown estate, a new term has appeared in internal documents about Royal Lodge. Status review. Absolutely no official statement has yet been made, and Buckingham Palace has declined to comment. But within the corridors of Windsor, whispers are growing louder. If the current rumours are true, this would be the first time in modern royal history such an action would mark a key, bold and unprecedented step. Perhaps King Charles's most decisive move yet, as he works tirelessly to redefine what the royal family represents in the 21st century. Once one of the royal family's most celebrated figures during the glittering 1980s when he married Sarah Ferguson in a ceremony watched by millions, his reputation has since completely crumbled under the weight of scandal and misjudgment. His prestigious military titles have been stripped. Royale. Lodge, once his quiet sanctuary, may soon become his last battle. The massive mansion with its grand gardens and memories of royal history has been under heavy scrutiny since early summer. The King's trusted advisers have been reviewing its financial and structural state, noting that it costs millions annually just to maintain. Money that very few believe Andrew can honestly provide. This is a monarchy in transition, caught between centuries of tradition and the relentless glare of modern media. The world no longer waits around for palace statements. It reacts in real time to 7-second clips, viral hashtags, and massive online outrage. The funeral video may have lasted just 7 seconds, but its impact has stretched incredibly far beyond that. What seemed like a fleeting, harmless exchange has forced a major confrontation deep inside the royal household, one about personal responsibility, image, and the future of the crown itself. For King Charles, this decision represents something far deeper. Which of these royal stories has affected you the most? Do you believe King Charles made the right decision about Andrew, or should family loyalty have come first? Share your thoughts with us down in the comments section below. Remember to like, share and subscribe for more updates. Also click the next video showing right on your screen. You will definitely enjoy it.